Hello out there, Rayland. This is Michael. This is the Street Preacher's Corner podcast, and today we thought we'd do something a little different. We thought we'd do a video, not because I feel the obligation to appear on camera, but just because it works better this way. I thought this time, today, I would tell you a story. It has been my contention for as long as I've had contentions that a life lived for Jesus Christ is the best life. It is the most exciting life. It is a life full of adventure and danger, and it is the fulfilling life, and a life where you leave the comfort of your home, you leave the comfort of the four walls of your church, and you venture out into the big bad world, to look men and women, boys and girls in their face and in their God-given eyeballs and talk to them about their souls. That is the you do that, and you never know. You never know what's going to happen. As Dr. Seuss would say, oh, the places you'll go. And a lot of these stories that I'm going to wind up telling through however many times we do this are going to be stories of that. Stories of encounters we've had on the street corner. Let me adjust this a little bit. There we go. And so let me lay this groundwork for you. This was 6 or 7 years ago. You know, you get to be a certain age and you can no longer remember how long ago anything happened. So let's say 2017-ish. We were going to church at a church up in Brunswick, Georgia. That was the pastor was a dear friend of mine. Still is a dear friend of mine. He's in the mission field of Papua New Guinea now. His name Ken Cermak, and I think the world of the guy. Not everybody likes him, of course. Not everybody likes me either. So you know, that's how you got to go. So Ken took over this church, and the church was dying because of mismanagement, ministerial mismanagement. So anyway, so he takes over the church, and we hit the ground running, right? I came on board. My family was there, his family was there, and the idea was we were going to reach the lost and we were going to teach the saved. I don't know if that sounds familiar to anybody, but so that was the idea, and so we instituted an array of outreaches, where we go out in the world and preach the gospel. And we were preaching at the nursing homes, we were preaching at the jail, and we were preaching at the rescue mission, and we were preaching at the if there was a crowd and we could get there, we were there. We knocked every door in Darien, Georgia, one day. Now that's a big accomplishment. It's like 2,000 people living there, but still, every door in one day. And so we were doing that, and so we were going downtown to preach. We'd go preach at the rescue mission, and then we'd walk like 2 blocks up, and we'd preach in downtown Brunswick, which we still do. I still do, by the way. That church that we were part of has been closed down. That's a story in and of itself. But the ministries, some of the ministries that church started, have continued on through Darnell Robinson and myself. Anyway, we would go down. I'm taking the long way to get there. But I'm a Southerner, and I'm telling a story, so just be patient. So all these things were going on, and one of the things that was going on was we were going to downtown Brunswick to preach. Well, there was a local radio personality who I think her name was Diana Reed. She saw us down there, and she became enamored with what we were doing. I could never figure out if this lady was saved or not. But she liked us. She liked Ken particularly. She liked Ken particularly. And so she had Ken. She took it upon herself to promote what we were doing. She had Ken on her radio show 2 or 3 times, and just did all she could to get the word out about what we were doing in downtown Brunswick. So one night she invites us to this thing called the Save the Youth Rally. I think that's what it was called. Save the Youth Rally. And we knew nothing about it. She said, come to this Save the Youth Rally thing we're doing and present your, what did she say? She said, I want to say she said, present your ministry. That doesn't sound like what she would say. It's something like, talk about what you're doing or something. So okay, so we show up. We don't know nothing, man. We don't know nothing about this rally. We don't know what's going on. But we show up because we've been invited, and we never get invited anywhere. And it was me, and it was Ken, and a couple of my kids, and maybe 1 or 2 of his kids. I have to go back and figure out who all was there. So we go to this event, and it's an indoor event. It's being held at like a high school auditorium kind of setup, like the basketball court of a high school. And what this was it was a fundraiser for various outreaches in the community throughout the year, targeted to the youth of Brunswick, particularly the black youth of Brunswick. So what they would do is they would raise money at this event, and they would use that to fund a basketball league for so kids have something to do after school, or they gave out shoes. Shoes was a big deal. Raise money to buy shoes for kids that don't have shoes. Humanitarian outreach kind of stuff. This was all a fundraiser for that. This was not a gospel oriented thing. This was a community outreach, humanitarian sort of thing. But we get invited to it, and we get told to do our thing. So I showed up with my banner and everything, and because that's what we do. And so we're inside this, but like I said, we don't know anything. We show up to this thing, and we are the only white people there. I mean, there's I don't know, a couple hundred maybe 300, 400 people there. And these are all kind of the upper crust of the black community in Brunswick, Georgia. The mayor was there, Mayor Harvey. All the black ministers of town that had the big black churches, they were there. And if you don't understand if you're not from the South and you don't understand why I'm making such a big deal, is that the American in the South churches are still very segregated by choice. You have churches that are distinctly black churches with their own culture and their own practices and their own. I mean, we have a lot in common, and we have more in common than we have not in common. But it is it's a subculture of American Southern Christianity is the black church. Anyway, so very rarely in the South will you have a white pastor with a black congregation, or a black congregation with a white pastor, or you know what I mean. So we went to this thing. So you thought I lost my place. We went to this event, the Save the Youth rally, and we're there, and we're like I said, we're the only white folks there. And so they stand us in the back, and what you have this little, like I said, this basketball gymnasium kind of thing going on, and they have these plastic chairs set up, in an audience format, and up at the front of this event is this little kind of platform area set aside, and they got a little guy off to the side, and he's like the MC of the event, and he's got a little DJ booth kind of looking thing. And what they were doing is they all these people would they were there. It was like a talent show almost. So you have all these people sitting in the seats. The audience is the mayor, the top political leaders in the black community, the the top ministers in the black community are all there. And they're there to give money. They're there to be seen. They're there to be part of this. They're there to give money. And they brought in various performance acts to entertain them, and then they would get up and make a pitch for money. Kind of like a telethon kind of thing. So that's the situation. We're standing in the back. We don't know what to expect. We don't know what. We don't know what, right? So Miss Diana Reeves, she greets us. She says, I'm gonna go talk to this guy here at the front, and I'm gonna get you guys up there, and you guys can do your thing. And I said okay, and Ken said okay. And so she leaves, and I watch her go up there, and she's talking to the MC guy. And the MC guy, he's not feeling it. He's not feeling it. He don't know us. I mean, we look different than him. He didn't know we were coming. All this stuff. But Diana Reeves is a big name at this event, so he's kind of got to do what she says, because she's a big name, and she's one of the big organizers of this thing. So we're standing at the back of this auditorium thing, behind the audience, way back in the back, away from everybody. And we're watching all these different acts come up and do their thing. They had people that come up here and did poetry, and come up here and rapped, and people that did just different performance kind of things. My favorite though was this. There was this old Motown kind of group, like 4 or 5 black guys in frilly tuxedos doing dance moves to old Motown hits. And they weren't like a big name group. They weren't the Temptations or the Drifters or the Platters or anything like that. They were just like some local group of guys that showed up for this. But they really knew how to put on a show, and I tell you what I mean. So you're watching, everybody's getting up there and they're doing the thing, and the bass player just starts laying down this bass line, bum 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 bum, and he's going on forever. And I'm like, what is he doing, man? This thing goes on for like 3 minutes of bum 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 bum. And I look, and one of the old men, I thought he went to the bathroom. No, he stepped out on purpose. He comes out, and he's old. I mean, he's old. He's probably pushing 70. And he's making his way up the little, there's a little aisle there in the middle between the seats. And he's making his way up there, and bum 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 bum. And he knows what he's doing. He's getting. I mean, it's taking a while. He's gonna get there. He's been here before. You understand? And so the other band members up there, and bum 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 bum, and then I mean, he's shuffling his way up there, and he gets to the front, and he spins around like he's James Brown or something. And they go right into and they're doing their thing, man. It was very, very entertaining. But I'm like, this is not what we're here to do. I don't know what in the world, Ken. What are we doing here? And at some point during this, I said, Ken, we get up here. What are we doing? He says, Mike, I want you to unfurl your banner. And we go up there. I want you to stand behind me with your banner, and I'm going to preach to these folks. Okay. So they put up the juggling thing, and they put up the dancing thing, and they put up the slam poet thing, and they put up the Motown group. And in between acts, we would watch Miss Diana Reeves go over and tap that MC guy on the shoulder and point to us, and he'd wave her off. Next, so now it's getting late. It's like 9 o'clock, and they've raised all kind of money. And we are the last act to go on, right? You can say save the best for last. Well, people already started leaving, so we didn't have the same size of the crowd that the other guys had. But we get up there, and so I go up there, and I'm standing. I got my banner. If you ever seen my banner, it's probably 5 foot by 5 foot. It's got Christ crucified. It says, "Behold the Lamb of God, which taketh away the sin of the world." And so I stand behind Kenny while Kenny stands in front of these people. Now, here's what I want you to think about. And I thought about this at the time. I don't think Kenny did. Ken was a young pastor. He was 26 or 27 years old when this was going on. Had just taken over a church that was dying. And we didn't have we had a little bit of money. But we didn't have a whole lot. We had no people. We had no manpower. We had everything that's going on, everything that has been started from scratch. And we're still scratching, And here he is, this young pastor who doesn't know anybody. I mean, he was not from Brunswick. He'd moved there to take the church. Didn't know anybody. Had no contacts. Had no connections. Had nobody. Had this one lady on the radio that liked him. And that was all he had going for him. So here he is. He's standing in front of the rich people in Brunswick. The influential people in a certain community in Brunswick. The mayor's there, for Pete's sakes. And it would have been very easy to just stand up there and say, I'm Ken Cermak, we're with Open Bible Baptist Church, we're doing this, and just introduce himself and ingratiate himself to the community, and maybe a little bit of money could have come our way. Maybe people would have said, "Oh, I like what you're doing. We're going to throw some support here," because that's the mood they were in. They were in the fundraising mood. They were in the let us know what you're doing mood. It would have been very easy, and it would have made life so much easier on him. Because remember, if you don't know the story here, we were fighting the city of Brunswick on some of our ministry stuff. We were not welcome at the things we were doing, and this would have been a chance to get things off the wrong foot onto the right foot. And all he had to do was just get up there and not compromise, but not push too hard. And nobody would have faulted for it. It would have opened doors to minister to these people later. It wouldn't have been wrong to go up there and just use this as an opportunity, as it was intended, to introduce yourself to this group of influential people that could make life easier on you and make life easier on your ministry. Ken Cermak did not do that. There's video somewhere out there of this event. And he wasn't mean, and he wasn't abusive, and he wouldn't get in there and call people a bunch of names. But he introduced himself, introduced our thing, and then proceeded to explain the gospel to the people that were there. And then he began to rebuke the ministers that were there for not preaching the gospel to the congregation. I think he said something like, it shouldn't take a guy from South Carolina coming down here to preach the gospel in public, to get the gospel out in the public square where it needs to be. You guys should have been doing this all along. And if you're getting caught up in prosperity gospel, if you're getting caught up in the charismatic stuff, if you're getting caught up in all this stuff, you need to fix that, because the world's dying and going to hell, and what we have is the cure for death. Now, when he started that out, he started talking about how he appreciated all the humanitarian outreaches that were going on, but if you put shoes on a man and that man dies in his sins and goes to hell, then what have you really accomplished? If you feed a man, and it's great to feed people, we did ourselves with the down at the rescue mission. But if you give a man food, if you give a man clothes, if you give a man money, if you give a man shoes, and then that man dies in his sins and goes to hell, then what have you really accomplished for the betterment of the thing you're trying to do? And that's the way he laid it out. I appreciate all those humanitarian things you're doing, but unless we're out here preaching, unless we as Christians are out there preaching the gospel, all of this is for naught. And the reaction of the crowd was of stunned silence. They expected to, have their head patted and have their egos stroked and talk about how generous they are and how glad we are you're here. All that stuff that everybody else have been doing all night long. Because if you're trying to get into a man's wallet, you're nice to him. But like I said, Kenny didn't do that. Kenny laid it out. He wasn't abusive. He was polite, but he was very firm, and there was no confusion about what he was trying to say. And in doing so, he made himself not their friend. I won't say their enemy, but I will say not their friend. They did not appear. Although I will say this. So it was stunned silence for the first handful of minutes. And then there was a couple of women in the audience that started saying amen. And once they said once they were good with what was going on, and once they appreciated what he was saying, the men started getting a little more. And I watched the crowd kind of loosen up and kind of settle in, and kind of, they didn't know what to expect out of him. We didn't know what to expect out of them. It's one of those things. But for probably 15, 20 minutes, he just laid it out plain, just straight across the board. And I will say that I was terribly impressed. It's one thing. I'm not a pastor. Don't want to be one. I've passed the opportunity up a couple of times for different reasons. It's one thing to be the rabble rouser in the church that goes out there and does the thing, and I don't suffer the consequences of having a bad reputation in the community the way the pastor does. The pastor, being the face of the church, he has to be a little more political about it. He has to think about, and I think some pastors think too much about that, and I think they pull their punches because of that. But here was an opportunity for a man to establish himself and put himself in good graces with people that could benefit him. And instead of that, he did what God told him to do. And it always impressed me. So here's the moral of the story. The moral of the story is, when the Apostle Paul gets before Felix, and when he gets before all these different kings and all these different authorities, what you never find Paul doing is you never find Paul complaining about his treatment or contesting his imprisonment. What he does every time that is the opportunity is given him is he puts the gospel out. And most of the time that meant that they were going to take him and put him back in that jail cell one more time. And I think that night Ken Cermak was very much manifesting the spirit of the Apostle Paul when he did that. So the moral of the story is, when you have the chance to say something, say something. Don't worry about your reputation. There's a difference between a reputation and a report. Don't worry about your standing in the community. Don't worry about what they're going to think. Do what God told you to do, and let God take care of the rest. There you go. That's my story. Thank you for listening. This is Michael. This has been the Street Preachers Corner podcast. Do something for Jesus Christ, and I will see you on the other side.